The movie opens with Ben, a tough and seasoned boxer, waiting for his match to begin. Just before his turn, a young boy approaches him, a boy who once trained under Ben and now has a fight of his own. With fiery confidence, the boy tells Ben that he's going to win. The bell rings, and he steps into the ring. At first, the boy takes a brutal beating, every punch knocking him closer to defeat. But then, something shifts. He remembers Ben's voice, his lessons, his discipline. With renewed focus, he steadies his stance, unleashes his strength, and mounts a fierce comeback, striking with precision and heart until his opponent finally hits the ground. The crowd erupts. The boy has won. And in that moment, Ben watches, silent, proud, and perhaps reminded that even in the darkest corners of pain, there's always a chance to rise again. Soon, it's Ben's turn to fight. Known for his raw aggression and unpredictable nature, he's a boxer most opponents fear. Once Ben enters the ring, his rage takes over. He fights like a beast, showing no mercy. Even after his opponent collapses, Ben continues pounding him until the referee and officials rush in to pull him away. It's clear Ben loses control in his fights. People believe he's mentally unstable. But the truth is, before every match, Ben takes powerful narcotic drugs that heighten his strength and aggression. Unfortunately, those same drugs have turned into an addiction he can't survive without. After his brutal victory, Ben goes out to buy and sell more of those drugs to earn enough money for his next fix. He knows if he doesn't have the money, he won't get the drugs. And without them, he won't last long. But the local police have already been watching him for a while. They know he's not only involved in illegal underground fights, but also in trafficking these banned substances. One morning, just before he can hide everything, the police raid his house. Startled, Ben quickly hides his remaining stash inside the living room. But before he can escape, the officers break in and arrest him on the spot. He's taken to the police station, where the officer in charge tells him they already have enough evidence to ensure he doesn't walk free this time. Soon, Ben is transferred to one of Thailand's most notorious prisons, a place reserved for the country's most dangerous criminals, those sentenced to death or life imprisonment. It's a hellhole filled with hardened gangsters and murderers who have nothing left to lose. Upon arrival, Ben's personal belongings are confiscated, and his details are registered. That's when the prison warden arrives, a man who already knows about Ben's background and his illegal dealings. Smirking, the warden offers him a deal. Whenever you need those drugs, come to me. I can get them for you, but you'll have to pay. Ben is torn, relieved that he might still get his fix, but also deeply disturbed, knowing this prison has no real law or order. The overcrowded prison has no proper cells, just massive halls packed with half-naked inmates sleeping on the filthy floor. Ben lies down nervously, but before he can rest, a ladyboy prisoner beside him whispers that the man lying next to Ben is already dead. Ben jolts in horror, realizing how grim this place truly is. Terrified inside, he still keeps a straight face, knowing that showing fear could make him a target. The next morning, the officers assemble the new inmates and explain the rules, how they're expected to behave, and the severe punishments for breaking any rule. Later, when Ben goes to fetch water, a few prisoners block his way and try to steal it. One of them tricks him deliberately. Ben realizes this is a test. If he lets this slide, they'll bully him every day. He decides to stand his ground. In a burst of fury, Ben fights back viciously, beating them all until the guards intervene. Once again, he loses control, and the guards immediately recognize how dangerous he truly is. As punishment, they throw him into solitary confinement for several days. After his release, Ben is transferred to another section of the prison, one that's far worse. This is where Thailand's most feared death row inmates are kept. Men who have given up on life and turned completely ruthless. The moment Ben steps in, he senses danger all around. The walls are covered with tattoos, and the air reeks of violence. A group of heavily tattooed prisoners surround him, members of the Yakuza. Their leader, Kong, approaches. His body is covered in intricate tattoos, and his stare is cold and threatening. Everyone in the block obeys him without question. Defying him means certain death. Kong glares at Ben and begins circling him like a predator. The entire room watches in silence, curious about the new foreigner, the only one among them. They assume Ben must have a lot of money. Kong calls him forward for questioning. Ben admits he's broke and was arrested for fighting in drugs. When Kong learns that Ben was once a boxer, he smirks and orders him to prove it. "Show me some push-ups." Ben hesitates but complies. After several reps, he starts to tire, but Kong's men keep shouting at him to continue. Ben realizes this is another test, his first day in the death row block, and if he shows weakness now, they'll never respect him and torment him every day. Determined to stand his ground, Ben clenches his fists, takes a deep breath, and prepares to show them what kind of fighter he really is. The fight goes on for a long time, but in the end, Ben thrashes them all, sending a clear message: anyone who tries to take advantage of him will meet the same fate. If anyone jokes about him or tries to hurt him, they'll face his anger. From that moment on, everyone understands that Ben is not weak. If anyone gets close to him or tries to harass him, Ben will make sure they pay dearly. Later, some gangsters pull him aside and try to make acquaintances. They tell him they have drugs, so Ben joins them and accepts the supply. Time passes like this, Ben living among the gangs, taking what's offered to survive. One night, while Ben goes to the toilet, he sees Kong and a group of men in the section mistreating a newly arrived boy. They take turns abusing him. When they notice Ben watching, they pull a knife on him and threaten. If he tells anyone about what he saw, they'll do the exact same thing to him. That sight terrifies Ben. Those gangsters had brutally assaulted the boy, and their numbers are too many. He knows he can't take them on. The image haunts him like a nightmare. If he ever shows weakness, they'll come for him too. So Ben forces himself to act tough. The next morning, Ben wakes to find that the abused boy has died. He was helpless against them. The indifference around him, even from the police, shakes Ben to the core. Fearful and desperate for drugs to calm his mind, Ben goes to the prison medical department and demands medication from the officer there. The officer, who already knows Ben's history and addiction, refuses. He tells Ben he won't hand over drugs unless Ben pays. Ben has no money, so he keeps pushing. The officer mistreats him. In a rage, Ben lashes out and begins to beat the guards and the officer. More guards rush in, overpower him, and beat him until he loses consciousness. They move Ben to another cell where a woman prisoner named Rolly, who works in the prison canteen, takes care of him until he recovers. After a few days, Ben regains consciousness. He's then transferred again to a different section, but now his legs are shackled because everyone knows that if his hands and feet remain free, he'll be uncontrollable. Soon the inmates start shouting. Girls are being brought into the ward. Ben sees that among them is the woman who had once cared for him. He realizes these girls are actually ladyboys. Rolly has been transferred into Ben's ward as well, and Ben goes to thank her for looking after him. He asks Rolly a favor. He needs cigarettes. Without them, he claims, he won't get through, and cigarettes would help him build rapport with other prisoners and officers if he gave them as gifts. He promises to pay her back as soon as his family wires money. Rolly trusts him and gives him 2 packs. Ben hides the cigarettes in his cell and later hands them over to Kong and his men, which wins him friends across the cell block. That night, while everyone sleeps, the guards wake the inmates and lead them to the corridor. 4 prisoners have been murdered inside the prison, and the guards want to find out who did it. They search everyone for weapons. At first, nothing turns up for anyone. When they search Ben, his shirt yields nothing either, until a knife is found tucked into it. Ben protests desperately, saying the shirt isn't his and that he is being framed. He tries to prove the shirt isn't his by putting it on to show it doesn't fit him at all, but then another prisoner steps forward and confesses that Ben committed the killings. The ward erupts. Everyone starts shouting that Ben did it. From Ben's reaction, the warden senses something is wrong and realizes the accusation isn't genuine. The warden releases Ben and instead arrests the prisoner who accused him. The guards beat that prisoner severely. His screams make Ben tremble. To forget the horror of it all, the next day, Ben goes back to the officer who supplies drugs and begs him again for medication. The officer says he won't give them for free. He needs money because he has to pay his superiors. Ben replies he has no money but desperately needs the meds. The officer proposes a deal. There's a dangerous Muslim inmate in his block who constantly threatens the officer. "Remove him for me," the officer says, "and I'll give you the drug." For the sake of drugs, Ben goes to that man and brutally assaults him. The man is left motionless. The officer then stops Ben and gives him the meds but warns, "I only told you to rough him up, not to leave him half dead. You must leave now, or we'll both be in big trouble." Seeing the injured man's condition shakes Ben deeply. He can't understand how he's becoming someone capable of such violence. Perhaps it's the drugs. His addiction makes him loathe himself. In a moment of despair, he even slashes a vein in his arm and tries to end his life. A fellow prisoner finds him in this state and they rush him to the hospital. A few hours later, he recovers. Taking advantage of the guard's negligence, Ben escapes from the hospital. But after running a short distance, he stops and realizes escape is pointless. His passport is seized, so he returns to the hospital and then goes straight back to prison. He falls into deep thought. He resolves to quit the drugs and focus on boxing, to become a great fighter through training alone. From that day, Ben begins practicing again. But soon he understands he cannot train himself in isolation, especially inside prison. He learns that the prison actually holds boxing tournaments. The best boxers from different prisons compete to represent their institutions, and the winners may even get a chance to participate in the Olympics representing Thailand. The prison runs training programs for competitors. Ben decides he wants to enter the tournament and goes to the prison boxing coach. But the coach knows Ben's record, violent, drug-using, and a foreigner, so the coach refuses to accept him. Ben is crushed. This was his last hope. He goes to Rolly and asks her for some sixes, a packet of drugs. He explains his plan. He'll win the prison boxing tournament, earn big money, then pay her back. Because Rolly trusts him, she gives him the packets. With the drug's help, the coach accepts him and Ben begins formal training. He trains day and night, works tirelessly, and improves day by day under the coach's guidance. In prison matches, no opponent can stand before him. One day, Ben finally competes against the best boxer in the prison, the top fighter everyone fears. Shockingly, Ben defeats him as well. Because so much betting had been placed on him, he wins a huge amount of sixes. Ben immediately takes all of it to Rolly and repays every bit of his debt. Curious, he asks her why she helped him in the first place. Rolly smiles and tells him she always knew he wasn't a bad person. He only did what he had to in order to survive. She knew he'd keep his word and pay her back. They embrace each other warmly, and that night, they share an intimate moment. The next day, Ben resumes his training with renewed determination. He continues to dominate match after match, defeating every opponent who stands in his way. Eventually, he faces an extremely dangerous fighter who even resorts to cheating to bring Ben down. Despite the unfair tactics and the brutal beating he takes, Ben refuses to give up. He keeps fighting until he finally defeats his opponent fair and square. Soon after, we see Ben in the warden's office. The warden tells him that he has been officially chosen to represent their prison in the upcoming boxing championship. "Win this for our prison's honor," the warden says. Overwhelmed with gratitude, Ben thanks him sincerely. The warden then gives Ben a letter. It's from his father. The letter reveals that Ben's father has been searching for him for years, having no idea where his son disappeared to. After seeing a news article about Ben, he finally discovered his whereabouts. His father writes that he is doing everything he can to get Ben released from prison. Reading the letter fills Ben with renewed strength and inner peace. He throws himself into training with greater passion than ever before. Everyone watching him is impressed by his dedication and skill. They begin calling him the White Tiger, and even tattoo a tiger on his back as a symbol of his fierce spirit. After practice, Ben often visits Rolly, but one day, he sees her with another man. Realizing she has betrayed him, Ben loses control in a fit of rage. Though he tries to attack the man, he ultimately can't bring himself to kill him. Consumed by frustration and heartbreak, Ben relapses. He starts taking drugs again. In his next practice fight, Ben's anger boils over. Ignoring the referee's calls to stop, he keeps savagely beating his opponent long after the match should have ended. Since it was only a practice session, everyone watching becomes furious. As punishment, Ben is thrown into solitary confinement. While locked away in the darkness, Ben reflects deeply on his actions and realizes his mistake. He continues to train alone in his cell, determined to control his rage. When he's finally released, he approaches his fellow boxers, including the one he hurt, and sincerely apologizes. Admitting his faults, Ben asks for forgiveness. The fighter accepts his apology, and soon they all begin helping him train again. But one night, when Ben is alone, Kong and his men ambush him. They beat him mercilessly and demand money. Ben tells them he doesn't have any right now, but promises to pay after he wins the championship, where the prize money will be huge. Reluctantly, they release him, but warn him that if he fails to deliver, they'll destroy him. Terrified yet determined, Ben pushes himself even harder in training. He knows he has no other choice. He must win. However, the heavy use of drugs has already taken a toll on his body. One day he collapses during practice, and the doctor warns him that his health is deteriorating because of the drugs. He must not fight, or it could cost him his life. But Ben refuses to back down. "I can't stop now," he insists. "I have to fight." Finally, the day of the match arrives. Ben's opponent is none other than Thailand's most dangerous and feared boxer. There are no qualifying rounds. This fight will decide who moves directly to the semifinals. The bell rings, and an intense battle begins. Ben's opponent strikes fiercely, landing heavy blows, including one to Ben's abdomen that reawakens his internal pain. Despite the agony, Ben keeps fighting, switching to pure technique over brute strength, striking smartly and precisely. After a long, grueling exchange of punches, Ben delivers a powerful combination that knocks his opponent out cold. The crowd erupts, but Ben himself collapses in the ring, unconscious. He is immediately rushed to the hospital, where he remains for several weeks before finally waking up. When Ben regains consciousness, he's taken back to prison, where his father is waiting to meet him. The two look at each other silently, eyes filled with emotion. Then it's revealed that the man playing Ben's father is actually the real Ben, the person whose true story this film is based on. 3 years later, Ben has become one of Thailand's most respected boxers, his name known across the nation. Seeing his success, the King of Thailand personally arranges for Ben to be transferred to an English prison. But upon arrival in England, the authorities immediately release him on parole. Today, Ben works as a social worker, dedicating his life to helping people struggling with drug addiction, people who once stood where he did. And that brings us to the end of this unbelievable true story, a journey filled with pain, courage, betrayal, and ultimately, redemption. If this story moved you, don't just scroll away. Smash that like button and help us cross 1,000 likes for Ben's incredible comeback. Now, I want to hear your thoughts. Which part of Ben's journey hit you the hardest? Was it his fall from grace, his brutal training, or the moment he found redemption? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every one of them. And hey, if you believe in second chances and the power of resilience, make sure you're subscribed, because we're just getting started. Many more powerful stories like this are coming your way soon. But see,